Welcome to episode 7 of the Rollout Show. We're excited to be joining you. We're actually together in studio today. My name is Weston Riddle, and I'll be your host, and I'm joined by my co host.
What's up, guys? This is Bradley.
Hey, that's the best intro you've had yet. We're really getting better at these
Hey!
things. This show's probably going to be terrible, though, but hey, we're getting better at it.
Hopefully, it'll be a little bit smoother and not as, a bunch of silence in between. Since we're actually in person today and we don't have to wait for the latency of the internet to tell us when the other person has spoken.
That's true, because that really does slow us down. And I remember last time, I didn't even know your power went out until you called me. I was just sitting there, I was like, man, something happened.
That was the most jank recording. We were talking to each other on the phone while our recordings were still going separate. It was all kinds of messed up.
See, that's what we do. That's how committed we are to our listeners. We want to get the information out to you. We want to entertain you. And we love you.
All two of you. Thanks, Mom.
None of my family even listens. They said it was too D list.
I think that's fair. We're
Yeah,
pretty D list.
we are. Hey,
It's better than F list.
good point.
I try.
We're gonna get there though, guys. Okay, so first topic. We unfortunately have to tell you that our baseball expert Nathan Boston had some scheduling conflicts. Hey man, don't hate on the man.
Nathan, we're not happy with you.
Nathan, I still love you, and I know that projects get in the way. It's okay. I've been there. I've lived that life. And plus, your project sounds absolutely terrible, so I don't blame you at all for wanting to get that knocked out.
I do. I blame you.
It's okay. Bradley's opinion doesn't matter. Anyway, we're still going to continue our topic of fantasy baseball, our fantasy baseball preview show. We're just going to mix in some other sports topics along the way. But we had our fantasy baseball draft today for our new Upstart League. And Bradley, this is your first experience with fantasy baseball. You've been a fantasy football veteran past couple years. You've enjoyed it, and now you're getting into baseball. So, what were your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I'm mainly into fantasy baseball because I do want to learn a little bit more about the sport. I used to watch it when I was younger, and now I kind of find it a little boring. I don't really have a rooting interest when I watch, so this will give me some of that. But the first few rounds went pretty well. Got a Donaldson and Manny Machado. And then it kind of fell off the rails because I don't know anyone other than the star players. So, is Dustin Pedroia still good?
He really had a bounce back season last year. I'm not even going to lie to you. He had a bounce back season.
I need him to have another one.
Another one. Shout out to Khaled. But you actually did pretty well. You did pretty well. I liked the Yelich pick. I was actually about to pick Christian Yelich, even though he's broken my heart in fantasy baseball
I
a few
had
times.
never heard of him before the World Baseball Classic, and I watched one game, and he was pretty good. So I drafted him.
See, aren't you glad I got you to watch that game?
I mean, we don't know if he's going to be good or not, so
I mean, he's probably going to be pretty good.
I hope so.
He's one of the best hitters in the league. He's got such a sweet swing, and that ballpark, Marlins Park is a doubles machine. So if he continues to grow in the power department, he can be like a consistent 20 homer bat. He's going to hit over 300, and he's going to be an MVP candidate.
I'm really hoping to beat all of you since you're all fantasy baseball vets, especially you, Nathan, for bailing on the show. I'm really hoping to just take it all like the guy in my work March Madness pool who has already clinched his victory by picking all the blue teams. Yay!
Hey, you know what? Your friend at work and me had the exact same picks, basically, except I didn't pick based on color. I picked based off of analysis and what I thought was going to happen and gut reaction. So I'm kind of impressed.
Your bracket isn't even good. You're in the 50th percentile.
It's better than most people.
It's better than literally half of people. That's what 50th percentile means.
Hey, you know what? 51-49. You know what? I'll take the odds.
It doesn't even make any sense. That's just gibberish.
Exactly. Sometimes you need a little gibberish in your life. Anyway, I think I had a pretty good draft. I picked third overall, and my first pick was Mookie Betts. It came down to the wire. I really wanted to pick Jose Altuve. I had him on my team last year, and he killed it for me. But I ended up going with Betts. He just seems to be coming into his own. Third year in the league, burst onto the scene last year. He's got speed, power, he's athletic, he hits for a high average. He's just an all around great player, and Boston's lineup is just dirty. So I figure he's going to get a lot of pitches to hit.
Now, I'm not as competent as our fantasy baseball expert, Nathan. So this conversation isn't going to be nearly as complex as it was going to be when he would be here. But I figured I'll ask you one question so we have a little bit of depth to this conversation. Who do you think is going to be the number one player in fantasy baseball this year? Who's going to end the season with the highest score? And we'll just leave it to hitters. We won't discuss pitching. Just leave it to hitters.
No, I'm planning on leaving it to hitters. Oh, that is going to be tough because the consensus is usually it's going to be Mike Trout. I want to say it may be Mookie Betts. That may be a little biased since I picked him.
It's incredibly biased.
You know what? Okay, I'll give you a guess outside of Mookie Betts. Probably Carlos Correa, to be honest with you. I really wanted to pick Carlos Correa. Just he didn't come back around to me in the second round. And I didn't want to pick him with my first pick that early, especially at pick 3, because Mookie Betts was on the board, and Altuve, and all those guys. So I'm really confident in Carlos Correa. I think he's going to have an MVP caliber season. And just the lineup he hits in, the Astros are stacked with Altuve, George Springer, Gurriel, Brian McCann, Evan Gattis, Carlos Beltran, Alex Bregman, who's going to be his first full season in the league. I mean, they have a deep lineup, man. Don't sleep on the Astros.
I think I recognize 3 of those names.
You know what? In your defense, most of those players have come into the league in the past 2 years, besides Brian McCann and Altuve, and kind of George Springer, but he's not as much of a household name yet. But so I'll give you a pass on that one, but they're going to be a perennial contender if they all stay healthy and stay together.
Well, that was a great answer. I don't have a follow-up question, and I have nothing else to add. So, yeah, that concludes my portion of the fantasy baseball talk.
Wow, good. I'm surprised you even lasted that long.
I think I did okay.
I think
I did okay.
And you were tempted to get Correa, weren't you?
I was, but I took Manny Machado with my first pick, and I really have no analytical reason why. I just know he's good. So I took him. But I was debating between him, Donaldson, who I ended up getting in the second round, Goldschmidt, and Carlos Correa, and I went with
Machado.
Manny Machado. I almost
yes.
said Mookie Betts.
You're
in my brain.
Mookie Betts has a great name, so hey. But see, that's what's tough. And I've been on a team where I had Machado coming off of a down year 2 years ago, and had Donaldson with my first pick, and I had the best offense in the league. So I'm never going to sleep on Manny Machado or Josh Donaldson. So I think you did great with your first few picks. And the thing that's great about Machado is since J.J. Hardy got hurt last year, he got to actually play a lot of shortstop, which is his natural position. And so now he has the positional flexibility of being basically the top shortstop in the game and also the top third baseman in the game. So if you draft him, you can basically just fill 2 holes, which is phenomenal because if you see like a lot of third basemen hanging around, then you draft another third baseman, just throw him at shortstop. If you see a lot of shortstop hanging around, just throw him at third base and draft you another shortstop, which are 2 very deep positions, so it works out really well for you.
Thanks.
Hey, that's why you went with Donaldson. You're like, well, I already have Machado at third base, but screw it, he's good.
That may have been an exact quote.
I think it basically was. You didn't talk like that because I wanted to put a little rasp in there, but yeah, that's basically what you said. And honestly, if you hadn't have taken him there, I would have been just hoping against all hope that he would have fallen to me because I'm a huge Josh Donaldson fan. Just personally. I mean, my team name the past 2 years has been Ronald McDonaldson.
Not this year.
Yeah, not this year. Not this year in either league, which is a little sad because Josh Donaldson's been my boy, but I haven't been winning. I've had a great offense, but I've had to diversify my team a little bit, focus a little more on the pitching. So I went pretty outfield heavy. List my outfield here. I have Mookie Betts, Charlie Blackmon, George Springer, Andrew McCutchen, and A.J. Pollock, who I think is going to have a really bounce back season. He's going to be healthy again, and hitting in Arizona is just, It's basically like hitting in Colorado. It's a great place to hit. And the year before last year, he was an MVP candidate. Stolen bases, homers, high average, great defense in center field, RBIs, and this year I think he's going to get back to that. And the main reason the Diamondbacks didn't contend last year, and it was a lost season, is because he got hurt and fractured his elbow a day before the regular season started, which was also one of the main reasons why my fantasy baseball season didn't work out last year, because I had drafted him with my second pick, and he fractured his elbow, so my outfield was built around him. So I made sure I had a lot of outfield depth and picked up Michael Brantley, and he's sitting on my bench since I was able to snag him, since a lot of people were concerned of his injuries.
I'm glad you know all this because I have no idea what you're talking about.
You have no idea.
No idea.
But Bradley, you're gonna learn, and you're gonna be like, wow, that Michael Brantley guy is really, really good. What was that?
I don't know. Something's in the studio.
Is it a raccoon? A squirrel? A pigeon?
Probably a pigeon.
I'm gonna go with a pigeon.
You know, those carrier pigeons get stuck in everything.
That's what makes them so versatile, man. I mean, mail is a thing of the past. You know what we're gonna do in the future? Not even texting, emailing, or anything. Carrier pigeons, bro. Book it.
Blast from the past.
That's right. All those other forms of communication are just way too mainstream.
Way too mainstream. You gotta go with the pigeon. One, love the animals. You treat them well, treat them nice. They do what you want. Two, it saves paper. You could write on the other side of the paper. I got nothing.
I mean, think about how much better it is on the environment, and it gives pigeons something to do.
Yeah, right now they're just wasting everybody's time flying around and pooping on stuff, but now they'll have a purpose.
Right, I know, and they're just sitting in parks waiting to be fed. Like, come on. Like, we need to get these pigeons back to work.
Get the pigeons back to work.
That's going to be my campaign slogan when I run for city council. Let's get the pigeons back to work.
I think the USPS union will not be happy with you.
Fight me. Just kidding, USPS. I actually have mad respect for what you all do.
I mean, other than the fact that they do it horribly, right?
Hey, don't hate on them like that. They do a lot of good work. They're really polite, and I've had to sort some mail before in the past, and that's a tough job.
I mean, you can have sympathy for them, but the fact that at least two companies do what they do at the same scale and do it way better, it's hard to have sympathy for them. Just get your act together, USPS, because you suck.
That's short-sighted, bro. They're such an easy target, so you want to attack USPS.
They are an easy target because they're bad at their job.
Do you or do you not have UPS stock? Do you or do you not have FedEx stock?
I do not have either, and I'm not particularly interested because Amazon is working on their own delivery platform. So no, thank you.
Short-sighted.
Thank you for turning this into the business podcast. Would you like to talk about my other holdings?
Sure. No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, that was our hipster/business segment we're just going to do on the fly
What's
from now on.
What's hipster about owning stock?
Hipster was about pigeons and mail and email being too mainstream. I mean,
yeah.
Sometimes I got to be a hipster, man. I mean, follow, bro. Come on. Follow. Anyway, let's get back to baseball after our short delay. I also think Andrew McCutchen's going to have a bounce-back season. He's been getting a lot of flack, with all the trade rumors and everything, which he still may end up getting traded, but I think Mr. McCutchen is going to bounce back. He's a good guy. He played well towards the end of the World Baseball Classic, which I think bodes well for him because it was more competitive baseball games compared to just toiling away in spring training. And you could see him actually get his timing right and, come up clutch like he usually does.
You're still talking about baseball?
I mean, I like talking about baseball. I mean, would you like to move on to a different topic?
I mean, if you're gonna keep going, keep going. I just have nothing to add, so I'll sit back quietly and let you do your thing.
All right, good. Get out of my shadow. Wait, is it get out of my shadow or get out of my spotlight? I think it's get out of my spotlight.
Probably spotlight. That would make way more sense. You would want me to be in your shadow.
Yeah,
because that means I'm behind you.
Get in my shadow and stay out of my spotlight.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I actually don't have anything else to add about baseball, so I'm just kidding. As Bradley walks away from the studio and now shrugs right
I
back.
thought we were still on baseball. I was gonna go take a break.
Oh, well, we are still on baseball. We can still be on
Okay.
baseball. If you'd like to get onto my other team in my other fantasy league, which is a 10-team league, so it's a little bit harder to find value like we did in our new 8-team league. So it's head-to-head scoring, 10 teams. It's pretty cutthroat. So most of the people I set out to get in the beginning that I had targeted, I ended up not getting. So I had to make a few sacrifices, and I tried really hard not to reach for a lot of guys, which tends to happen in this league. And so catcher, I got Salvador Perez, which I was really lucky to get because he fell. Because people like Gary Sanchez went fast, Gary Sanchez, Buster Posey, so I didn't like the value I was getting from them there. So I went with Mr. Consistent, Salvador Perez. Then I reached a little bit for Matt Carpenter. I believe I got him in the third or fourth round, but the positional flexibility that he afforded me, and plus I think he's just going to have a really monster season. He's always right there. He's been one of the best leadoff hitters in the game, and now he's going to be dropped down the lineup with Dexter Fowler there. So he's going to be dropped down the lineup, more of a run-producing role. So instead of him hitting all these solo homers out of the leadoff spot, he's going to be hitting in the 3-hole or 4-hole, which should give him a little bit more RBIs and maybe a few more runs scored, maybe a little higher batting average, which should help him out. And he just has positional flexibility, second base, first base, third base. So picking him there allowed me to focus more on pitching because I knew I could cover a lot of different bases with Matt Carpenter, pun intended. So I went with Carpenter. I also have D. Gordon at second base. I think he's going to have a bounce back year. Just the stolen bases. He's one of the fastest people in baseball. He's just such a threat on the base paths that, I have to get him. Got anything to add about D. Gordon?
He got busted for steroids a couple years ago, right?
It was actually last season.
Oh, see, I know something.
Yeah.
I almost drafted him because the name looked familiar, and
That's probably why.
I tried to draft players who I knew, and I don't know very many, but I didn't. That's my contribution. Goodbye.
Okay. Well, I mean, he won a batting title, but you may say that it was due to steroids. I don't think so. I think that was just based off of his talent. But I mean, it's a fact. He did get busted for performance-enhancing drugs, which he's apologized for, and I'll give him the benefit of the doubt because
D. Gordon, more like Cheat Gordon.
if we had sound effects, I'd be playing a ton of them right now.
That's staying in.
That's so good. I'm glad you appreciate that. That's one of my better ones. Anyway, I'm just gonna start doing sound effects on the fly, and people will think we have a soundboard to do that. It's just gonna be Weston. Anyway, I also picked up Eduardo Nunez, so I have a lot of speed on this team. I really need a third baseman. Third baseman went really early, which is usually where is the strongest point in my team is at third base. So I ended up with Eduardo Nunez. I think he's going to do well his first full year in San Francisco. Going to steal a lot of bases, hit for about 280, maybe 10, 15 homers, and should be pretty good in that lineup. Jose Peraza, shortstop and outfielder, liked his position flexibility. He's also really fast, and in that ballpark, Great American Ballpark's really small, so his power is going to play up a little bit, and that team is also built on speed. He's also going to get to play all year long, so they're going to stick with him, and when he actually got to play last season, he hit over 300, so I think that bodes well for him this season. Marcus Semien, I mean, got him at my second base / shortstop position. He's just got mad power that I couldn't pass up on. I really needed to fill the roster with a little bit more power, so he's going to get every opportunity to play in Oakland. He's going to get every opportunity to play. He's got mad power. Might end up trying to trade him in the second half because he usually seems to be a quick starter. And in years past, I've traded him in the second half before he seems to fall off. So I'll probably keep that strategy this year. Then Eric Hosmer, who I think is a legitimate MVP candidate this season. He performed extremely well in the World Baseball Classic. He's a leader. He does everything well. He's also coming up on a contract year. He wants to stay in Kansas City, but You know how that goes, smaller market with a big star and other big stars on that team who are up for free agency. So I think he's going to have a great year. He may end up playing outside of Kansas City after the trade deadline, just depending on how the Royals season goes. But I think he's going to be right up there, about 30 homers, 100 RBI, just all around 280. Great season. Then my first pick, even though I had pick number 3, I ended up getting Mike Trout because, like I said, third baseman went early. So Machado and Arenado were the first 2 picks off the board. I'm actually not the biggest fan of Mike Trout in fantasy baseball, but I usually don't even have the chance to get him. So it was more of one of those things where you can't pass up on arguably the greatest player in baseball. So I went with Mike Trout. Furthermore, with my stacked outfield, Charlie Blackmon, Yoenis Cespedes, Andrew McCutchen, AJ Pollock yet again. Utility, I have Max Kepler, the German import who's on the Minnesota Twins. He's got great power, and he's coming into his second year in the big leagues. I think being on that young team, he's going to perform very well. He's going to get the chance to thrive and to struggle. Going to seemingly playing every day, so I think that's going to be very good for him. Joe Mauer, my DH spots. Honestly, my last pick in the draft, I could only pick a designated hitter, and it was between Joe Mauer, who's got the track record, or Avisail Garcia, who's had a great spring. So I ended up just picking Mauer, and if it doesn't work out, I'll just drop him for somebody else. And then on my bench, if he's going to end up starting the season healthy, I also have Michael Brantley, who I think is going to be the missing piece for the Indians. The Indians were decimated by injuries last year, and now they've just added 3 starters back to the rotation who were out at the end of the year. They're adding a potential MVP candidate in Michael Brantley, 30 homers, 15 steals kind of guy, but gives you great defense in the outfield. And you also added Edwin Encarnacion. So, I mean, this team, they're going to have a target on their back, but I think this team is well positioned for another deep postseason run. So I bought in, went with Brantley even though he's hurt. My rotation, which I decided to take a little bit more interest in than I have in years past. I have Jake Arrieta, contract year, great team. I think he's going to have an amazing season. Carlos Martinez, potential Cy Young candidate, ace of the Cardinals. He just gets better and better every year. Masahiro Tanaka, who basically was a Cy Young candidate last year, had a bad last couple starts of the year. The main question with Tanaka is always, how long is that elbow going to hold up? I mean, he's got the partial tear in his UCL, which is never really a good sign. And just the way he pitches, coming over from Japan, from pitching every 6 days to every 5 days, a lot of strain on that elbow. You were a little scared away by Tanaka, weren't you, Bradley?
I was, because he has half of an elbow. How are you still going?
I can talk baseball a lot.
Man, I'm so excited for football season to come back and I can actually speak. But no, go on. This is the Weston show now.
Okay, well, the Weston show continues. Also want Jose Quintana, have him in both leagues. Big believer in him, even though the team's probably not going to be good. Dylan Bundy, he's a reliever who starts, which was really good because towards the end of the draft I could only pick relievers, so you might as well get somebody who also has starter capability. So Dylan Bundy, I think he's going to be the number 2 starter there in Baltimore. Stephen Wright, if the shoulder's healthy, I think he's going to have a really good season. It's just you're always cautious when you draft a knuckleballer. You never know what you're going to get, but I think he's going to have a great year. Cam Bedrosian, relief pitcher. He's going to be the closer for the Angels this year. He's got really good stuff, an electric fastball, so I think they're going to keep him in that role all year. Aaron Sanchez won the ERA title last season, almost won the Cy Young. Faded down the stretch when they're trying to conserve his innings. I think he's going to have a great year. Blue Jays. Michael Fulmer, American League Rookie of the Year. Solid all-around pitcher. Jake Odorizzi, he's basically your solid number 3 starter. Gives you good innings, gets you good strikeouts, doesn't allow too many hits. So he's just a great all-around guy in fantasy baseball. And then my wild card is Joe Musgrove. Picked him up at the end of last season. Made some starts with the Astros. Got great stuff, and I think he's going to really solidify the staff there with a full season.
Are you done?
I'm done. That's my whole team in the other league. You good? Hey, thank you.
You just rambled for like 20 minutes, and I recognized like 3 people.
But you know what? in like a month, you're gonna recognize a lot more of those
Yeah, I'll
people.
probably be pretty into it. I really like fantasy sports. I like to get into it.
See, which is why I'm glad we're able to do this league because it gets more people into baseball and just fantasy sports in general gets more people into sports, which I'm always a big fan of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Hey, we're in agreement.
Are we finally done?
Yeah. So another team which may be finally done before we actually expect them to be is the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yay, transition!
We're getting so good at this. Anyway, Cleveland Cavaliers, they have looked pretty terrible. They've looked closer to the Brooklyn Nets than the Cavs.
They have been blown out by bad teams, and it's been really weird. And they had a player. Apparently, they had a players-only meeting about it, and nobody really had anything to say. The attitude hasn't really changed. They're still losing big to bad teams. I think they just lost by like 20 to the 76ers or something. Oh my gosh.
I mean, do you think it's partially because of how burnt out they are with all the attention they get and just how they strive for success and a combination of like the bad teams starting some players who are out there thinking, "Oh, I have a shot to like, stick it to the world champions."
So I think it's a few things. For one, no, I'm not worried about them getting to the finals, and I would be if they played in, like if this was 6 or 7 years ago and the East was competitive with the Celtics and the Derrick Rose Bulls. But right now, they have there's no competitors unless Kyle Lowry comes back and he comes back playing well, which will be difficult because he's been away from basketball for a couple months.
Wrist injuries are no joke.
And he always struggles in the playoffs every year. Kyle Lowry's a great point guard, but he's always terrible in the playoffs. Unless he can come back and play better than he has before in the playoffs, I don't see another team in the East that can take them. I think the Cavs are older. They have, I believe, half of their players that play significant minutes are over 31. I think that I have that right.
I
So
think you're right
part
on
of
that.
it is they're running out of juice because they're older. I mean, LeBron has played more in the last decade than anyone, and it's not even close, even with all of the nights he takes off. But I also have faith in a LeBron team. It hasn't been since what 2011 that a LeBron James team was not in the finals.
I mean, which is ridiculous when you think about that in the grand scheme of things because he's been on, two different teams
He's
as
been there
well.
6 straight times. That's absurd. He's a great player. I feel like you have to give him the benefit of the benefit of the doubt. There is a switch that he can flip and that the team can flip, but I'm also worried that they're playing the Bulls in a losing effort, and he's on the court for like 41 minutes. It doesn't make sense to me. They need to start if they're gonna tank, which is sort of looks like what they're doing. I don't know if it's intentional or not.
Hopefully it's intentional for them. If not, they're just playing like crap.
I think they need to start resting LeBron and Richard Jefferson, some of the older guys. Let Kyrie and Kevin Love and Tristan Thompson go out there and try and secure the 1 seed. But LeBron needs a breather, I think. The Wizards, I think, have an okay shot at dethroning the King. But their starting five is as good as probably anyone in the playoffs other than the Warriors if Kevin Durant comes back. But I have some questions about their depth and their coaching, and the fact that they haven't been able to win in the playoffs consistently before. I think they have a shot. I don't think the Celtics have a shot, unfortunately. They just won't match up well defensively against the Cavs, and LeBron will control that series because they don't really. I mean, they have guys that can defend LeBron. They have Marcus Smart. They have Jaylen Brown. But they don't have an answer to Kyrie. That's going to be their problem. They have Kyrie is one of the most dynamic playmakers in the sport, and they don't have an answer to him, or really Kevin Love for that matter. And the best rebounder on the court will be Kevin Love and Tristan Thompson. So I think, but with all that said, I still think the team with the best shot is the Raptors, and I don't think Kyle Lowry will play well. So I think the Cavs will make it to the finals, and then they'll lose in 5 or 6.
See, I have a couple different points on that. The thing about Kyle Lowry's injury, which may help them out in some respects, is that he's just going to be coming into the playoffs fresh. So he may not actually be thinking about it as much.
But is it fresh or is it rusty? I mean, even I hate to compare us to professional athletes,
Okay, wow,
but
all right.
when you're consistently shooting day after day, your shot feels good, you feel right. You take a few weeks off and come back, you're rusty. It takes you a few games to get
That,
back into it.
that's going to be the main thing, as well as the chemistry with Ibaka, because he hasn't even gotten to play with Ibaka.
And Ibaka is going to need to be a huge part of this team if they're going to take on the Cavs.
Oh, absolutely. Which I loved that move for them at the time, but I mean the Lowry injury just kind of.
Well, you can't predict those things, especially in
can't.
basketball. You expect it a little bit less than the NFL. I feel
Yeah.
bad for the Raptors. I think this is the most vulnerable LeBron has been since the Raptors have been good. This is their chance. They need Kyle Lowry. And I mean, maybe next year too, but it'll be Kyle Lowry starting to get up there. Serge Ibaka will get a little bit older. I think
Well-
this year, if Kyle Lowry can come back healthy, is their best shot to finally break through with the
Well,
East.
that's the main thing is because Ibaka's on a contract year, Kyle Lowry's on a contract year, so this is really the last chance the whole band is going to be together, which is why I think that Kyle Lowry, the mental aspect, he's going to be fresh. I feel like he's not going to be stressing as much as he has in the past, and I think he's just going to be ready to get on the court and do whatever it takes to win. I think he's going to be more of a facilitator than them leaning on him for actual scoring because of Ibaka.
Well, and now they have DeMar DeRozan too.
Oh yeah, DeMar DeRozan, because that was the thing when Lowry looked bad was also at the same time DeMar DeRozan wasn't looking that good in the playoffs, which was crazy to think they were winning all those series when their two best players weren't playing well. It was basically the Bismack Biyombo show.
And I mean, I'm personally, I love LeBron. I think he's the second greatest player to ever play. I will be rooting for the Raptors and for Kyle Lowry to play well because I feel so bad for the genuinely great players who have this stigma about them that they can't do it in the playoffs. And I want to see Kyle Lowry break through. And even if they lose, I hope he plays well and they play a 7-game series because I think that'll help get the stigma off of him a little bit.
And see, the series last year, I mean, every series basically went the maximum amount of games they played last year, which is crazy. And they were in every single series, and they were a fun team to watch. So that's why I kind of have a rooting interest for the Raptors. I also part of the underdog thing because this team isn't going to be together that much longer, and you want them to actually get somewhere besides just the Eastern Conference Finals. You'd like to see them get through because unless Kyle Lowry and Ibaka are both committed to taking a pay cut, it's going to be either or. So it's either you're going to get an older point guard and pay him max, or you're going to lose your power forward you just traded for.
The only downside of all this being an NBA fan is, I mean, the finals are over. Whatever team gets through on the West, be it the Spurs if Kevin Durant comes back and has issues, or the Warriors, they're going to beat whatever team comes out of the East, whether it be the Raptors or the Wizards or the Celtics or the Cavs. So as an NBA fan, you really want to see it be the Cavs because even though I think that they'll lose in at most 6, you get to see LeBron put up 40, 15, and 10 every night. And you won't get that same kind of show from the other teams.
See, that's the thing. I think if it's the Cavs, there's still a shot. But another team who I think would have a shot that you touched on a second ago is the Washington Wizards. I think they have a legitimate shot to take down the Cavs, and they have a deep team. Their weak spot was their bench. They went out. They got Bogdanovich, I believe I'm saying his name correctly, from the Nets. They added a couple of pieces. They lengthened the bench. They have some scoring off the bench now, and they have a really underrated and good starting five. I think John Wall is determined. I mean, the last time he was in the playoffs, he played with a broken wrist and played
John
well.
Wall is a top 5 point guard that nobody talks about.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, unfortunately, this is a good comparison for him. He's like an outspoken Mike Conley.
I think he has the same skill set as Mike Conley, but he's way more athletic,
He is,
which is
yeah.
his advantage. But I mean, he's not the dynamic scorer; he's the dynamic facilitator.
He's just such an all-around great player, and he's perfect for that team. It's just he hasn't seemed to be able to break through, whether due to coaching, injuries, or just whoever they've matched up with in the playoffs. But now with Scott Brooks there, who I think, the second time around as a head coach, I think you're generally better off than you were the first time. So I think he's going to be much improved in the playoffs. He knows he's in the Eastern Conference now. He knows how to manage stars' personalities. So he's going to be able to lead that team, I believe, to the Eastern Conference Finals. Now we'll see, who it's against, which I mean, pretty much sure it's going to be the Cavs. So even though I was rooting for the Raptors, I do think it's going to be Cavs and Wizards.
You
But
think the Wizards will beat the Raptors or the Celtics if they have to play either of those teams?
in the Eastern Conference Finals,
No, in the Eastern Conference semifinals.
I do. I think they have enough answers on defense to neutralize Isaiah Thomas, which is basically the entire team is funneled through Isaiah Thomas, which doesn't really bode well for the playoffs. So I think they have enough. You have the Polish Hammer up the middle. You got Otto Porter at the 3, Markieff Morris at the 4. They're just a solid all-around team. You have 2 prolific scorers and really good facilitators and good on defense, and Bradley Beal and John Wall. They play just really well together as a unit. They're deep on the bench. They're all determined, and I think they could get the Celtics, honestly. Celtics or the Raptors, just because of the whole thing we said about the Raptors before is which Toronto Raptors are going to show up.
I think either of those series, Raptors Wizards or Celtics Wizards, would probably be the best series in the playoffs.
Honestly, I don't think you're wrong there because it'd be the 2 most evenly matched teams. You may get a few good matchups in the West, potentially if it's like Rockets and Warriors,
Or
potentially
Spurs
Warriors, something like that. But the earlier matchups, when it's going to be what the Warriors versus the Nuggets or the Trailblazers,
or the Thunder.
yeah, I mean, unfortunately for them, I'm a big fan of the Blazers, and I like what the Nuggets are doing. It's just, I mean, it's just not a competition
You're
right
going up
now.
against a chainsaw. The Warriors are one of the greatest teams of all time, and they added Kevin Durant. What are you going to do?
I mean,
It's
you
not
just
fair.
can't. I mean, it really isn't. I mean, it's. I think the Blazers are eventually going to get there as everybody on that team matures and they add a couple more pieces, maybe ship out a contract here or there. But I mean, honestly, what happened with them too as well. I mean, Nurkic broke his leg. So I mean, for some reason he like fractured his leg, but he's only going to be out 2 weeks, so he's going to be back for the start of the playoffs. I don't know what he's on or something, but he's going to be back in 2 weeks. But that man has been balling in Portland, so I honestly think they're going to be an up and coming team next year. But this year, I don't think they have what it takes to win a playoff series, especially not against the Warriors or anybody like the Spurs or Warriors.
I mean, personally, I think the West is settled. I think the East is the far more interesting conference. I think it's very simple in the West. It's either going to be the Warriors or the Spurs.
With an
And
outside chance the Rockets squeeze in
it's
there.
either going to be the Warriors or the Spurs. And I did not misspeak.
Give Houston some love, bro.
No. And if Kevin Durant comes back healthy, it's over. The whole season's over. Might as well call it now. Warriors in at most 6.
Cavs in 7. All right, moving on. Moving on, let's talk about another team that is just like the Golden State Warriors, who everybody thinks is going to run away with everything, who actually took a hard L yesterday. The UConn women.
111 straight victories. Snapped. Like Joe Theismann's leg.
Oh, bro.
No? Was that not tasteful?
Too real, man. Too real.
Sorry.
Snapped like you're breaking off a piece of that Kit Kat bar.
That's a little less morbid.
I tried to keep it fun. Candy's fun.
Family show.
Dang straight. Anyway.
So I feel bad for UConn. I mean, they're the most dominant team perhaps in the history of any sport. But it's awesome for Mississippi State. I mean, the game went to overtime. I don't know her name. I'm not going to pretend to, but the girl from Mississippi State shoots a buzzer beater in overtime to win the game. It was awesome.
That's just amazing, especially for a school like Mississippi State. You like to root for schools like that who everybody going in didn't think they had any kind of chance to beat UConn because I mean, what, the year before they lost by 60 to
By
UConn?
60. And to be fair, no team is thought to have any chance against UConn. UConn has been so dominant for so long. 111 straight wins. That's ridiculous.
And honestly, I think this is better for women's college basketball to have it somebody other than UConn.
Well, I think that's an interesting discussion, actually, because I think this is going to severely hurt their ratings going forward. And I mean, I think they only have one game left, the finals, which is
Yeah.
Sunday night. But I think people, unfortunately, in women's college basketball tune in to see UConn. And UConn's not there anymore. It's two teams that nobody's ever heard of, nobody cares about, in Mississippi State and Notre Dame. Maybe?
I don't think it's Notre Dame.
Who is it?
Stanford.
This is embarrassing.
This is very embarrassing. Let's look this up.
Stat check. Can you type a little softer, please?
Yes. I will. Okay. It's loading.
Wow, some great research. We need an
also
intern.
Morgan Williams is the young lady's
Good
name.
for her. Good for her.
That's great.
We need an intern that can do our research for us.
You really do. Oh, an ad played.
Good job. I
Thank
hope
you.
the mic picked that up.
It did for a little bit. Not gonna lie to you. We got that. We got that out.
So if anyone wants to intern with us and be our research assistant, just hit us up at the Rollout Show. Thanks.
At the Rollout Show on Twitter.
That's
is at
the Rollout Show.
Actually, we have it's not Stanford. South Carolina beat Stanford.
How about them getting
Exactly.
to both Final Fours?
Isn't that amazing? See, that's why I'm rooting for schools like this, Mississippi State, South Carolina, because honestly, wouldn't that be spectacular if it's South Carolina in both finals games?
I mean, I think South Carolina already lost. Yeah, South Carolina just lost 77 to 73.
Wow, that's a close game. I predicted Gonzaga anyway, so I mean that kind of works out better. But still, both teams in the Final Four in both respective tournaments—that's amazing.
And both schools not necessarily powerhouses in that sport. Certainly not men's. I know less about women's.
Women's, they are pretty good.
Are
South
they a
Carolina,
1 seed?
They're 1 seed. Yes,
Okay.
they're predominantly them, and Stanford and Notre Dame are usually the big challengers to UConn, even though UConn just completely dominant. But they're usually really, really good teams. The thing that, going back to the deeper discussion we're having, I think it's better for women's college basketball because, think about it, nobody really fills out a women's college basketball bracket because it's always just, well, what's the point? UConn's just going to win. Whereas this, it's more of potentially down the road, I'm looking more long-term here, it could make it for more interesting, kind of like the men's tournament.
But I mean, this is 1 season. UConn has not won the championship before, and then the next season they win it. And unfortunately, I don't think there is as much room for optimism here. I think you have a situation where for the sport, maybe it's good. Competition is good. It's the reason I think Kevin Durant going to the Warriors is probably a slight negative to the sport as a whole. But in terms of viewership, I guarantee you the ratings will be down
for the term.
For the
most
finals.
likely, they probably will
for the
be.
Finals.
For long term, it may be positive because it shows that UConn isn't unbeatable. But
perhaps, but I think a lot of what drives ratings in women's college basketball is tuning in to see perfection.
Yeah, that's true.
To see the greatest sports team arguably ever in their sport. They've been so dominant. They've had like 3 stretches of these where they've won like 90 games in a row, 100 games in a row, 111 games in a row.
It's crazy.
I worry that ratings are going to go down. But we'll see. Hopefully, this is a net positive for the sport. Yeah.
Hopefully so. So it's basically ongoing while we're recording. So South Carolina has lost. Gonzaga's going to the finals. Great for Mark Few and that program finally getting there. So who do you got overall winning it all and against Oregon and UNC?
Well,
Picking UNC?
I think if UNC gets to the finals, I think they're going to win. But if somehow Oregon beats them, I think the Zags have a good shot. I mean, one thing about the Zags is they have had an incredibly easy path
And you know
thus
what?
far. I mean, what's the hardest team they've played so far is West Virginia, and they should have lost. They almost lost. They haven't played anybody this entire tournament, and yeah, South Carolina deserved to be there. They beat a lot of good teams, including
really
Duke, to
did.
get there. But they put
Honestly,
a good effort against Gonzaga, but their talent is not equivalent.
honestly, I mean that's really not Gonzaga's fault. I mean they
Oh, it's
just
not. I'm not blaming them. I'm
yeah,
just saying it's
there were just so many upsets in
sometimes
that
you get
bracket.
lucky. Sometimes you get
And
lucky.
honestly, Gonzaga has been on the opposite side of that for the past few years of being the unlucky team. So I mean,
Absolutely.
I'm pretty happy for them that it's broken the other way for a change. But I mean, they've just been the beneficiary of a lot of upsets happening. I believe North Carolina was the beneficiary of that last year, and then this year they've had the toughest road of any team possible to get there.
And I think if UNC wins it all, they will have absolutely earned it. Not that Gonzaga won't have, but I mean, there's a difference in opponent level. There just
Well,
is.
honestly, I mean, that kind of goes back to 2 years ago in the playoffs where, I mean, not to discredit what the Warriors did, but every team they played during that postseason in the Western Conference, well, I mean, and even in the finals, their starting point guard for the team got injured.
And sometimes things just roll your way, and sometimes they don't. That's how it goes.
Exactly. I mean, sometimes those things just even out. I mean, one of the greatest things and one of the worst things about tournaments and playoffs. Okay. So, speaking of things rolling your way and some things not rolling your way, let's talk about the Oakland Raiders rolling to Las Vegas.
Hey, that was
Ayo.
pretty good.
Thank you.
I was expecting a rough transition there, but that was pretty good. I liked
Thanks.
it.
I'm just creative sometimes. So, anyway, so I'm the Oakland Raiders. I have a unique perspective on the whole franchise uprooting from a city that it's been in for a long time.
You
kinda
mean
thing.
like the St. Louis Rams? I mean L.A. Rams, of course. My mistake. Cronky. The Cronky Land Rams.
Kroenke's billion-dollar playpen.
Get out of there, Todd Gurley. Run.
Run as fast as you can on whatever legs you're going to have left after dealing with such a
They're
terrible
turning him
offensive
into,
line.
you know who I'm talking about.
Mark Ingram?
No, Trent Richardson. Mark
Yeah.
Ingram's good.
No, Mark Ingram's good. I was just trying to think of who you're like going with, where they're like not utilizing him properly.
The one after Mark Ingram.
Okay,
But you are correct. The Saints do an injustice to Mark Ingram.
exactly. They honestly do. He had a rough first couple
Tim
years.
Hightower is not a good running back. Why are you giving him equal carries with Mark Ingram?
Well, speaking of that, he's going to the 49ers now. He signed today, but it's looking like the Saints are really targeting Joe Mixon as well. So that'd just be another disservice to Mark Ingram. But...
Anyway, back to the subject
back
at
to
hand.
Oakland. I really feel bad for the people of Oakland because what hasn't been getting reported a lot in this situation is to convince the Raiders to leave Los Angeles and move back to Oakland, they had to make a ton of renovations to the Coliseum, and they had to do it very, very quickly. So a lot of the infrastructure wasn't really there to support it. And the city of Oakland is $150 million in debt on the Coliseum, and the Coliseum's falling apart. So the city of Oakland honestly has so many other issues going on just in general around there. It's not necessarily the best place. There's a lot of poverty there, and it's also a very expensive place to live. So they really couldn't afford to. Oh, you know what? We have to. We already lost the Warriors. They're moving to San Francisco soon, so we have to get all this money together to try to keep the A's here and also try to keep the Raiders here. because the Coliseum was a great baseball stadium before they made the renovations and put all the seats in center field to appease the Raiders, which a lot of people call that Mount Davis out in center field, which is two huge decks of seats which go unused during baseball season, really, because 60,000 people aren't really going to be there at a baseball game necessarily. So anyway, they really couldn't afford to build both teams a new stadium, especially when both are seeking public funding. What's really bad about this is the A's have historically not been a very profitable franchise or had the most amount of money. I mean, there's a book and a movie starring Brad Pitt about it. I mean, the Oakland A's are bargain hunters here.
And I think Vegas is the perfect spot for an NFL team. I just wish it was an expansion team. I mean, I hate seeing cities, especially one with as dedicated and passionate fans as Oakland, because that place was always rocking and those fans were great. I hate seeing teams uproot and move. I think for the league and for NFL fans, having a Vegas team is a net positive. I just wish it could have been handled the way the NHL is handling it with an expansion team.
See, I agree with you there, and it's a really unique thing because I think the Raiders are actually the perfect fit for Vegas if you had to move an existing team. But then you also have the situation that's happening in LA. Most of the fans in LA were actually Raider fans. So most of the people there wanted the Raiders to move, not the Rams, not the Chargers for sure. I mean, the Chargers are going to play in a 20,000 seat stadium that they're not even going to fill.
That move makes no sense to
It
me.
doesn't make any sense at all. Honestly, if you're going to do anything like that, it would have been, the Chargers moving to Vegas. Probably would have been better for them because most of the fans in LA are probably planning on making that 4-hour drive to Vegas. But anyway, it's just, I think it's a good fit for the team. It's
I
just
agree.
You hate to see what's happening to the Oakland fans. And then also you have the whole fact that the Raiders are planning on playing in Oakland for the next 2 years, and they jacked up the ticket prices in some cases by 50%, which is just ridiculous.
It's like they're trying to take advantage of the fans because they know fans will want to go see the Raiders one last time. And it's like they're trying to take advantage of them, and I don't like that. I also don't like this idea of, hey, I'm breaking up with you, but I want you to be madly in love with me for another 2 years. I hate that idea. If you're a Raiders fan in Oakland and you're going to continue to be a Raiders fan, I don't disrespect you for that. I probably wouldn't do that. But it puts off a weird vibe.
I mean,
It's like,
really
keep coming
does.
to our games for 2 more years, but after those 2 years, we're done with you.
And honestly, one of the last, 2 years ago when I was in St. Louis, I made a point before we flew out of there to go to the Rams and Steelers game because I never knew if there'd be another Rams game in the Dome again. And at least, I mean, I didn't think of it as a positive at the time. The Rams weren't being forward and upfront that saying, hey, we're moving. They were still lying to the public. But you still had some sense of optimism that the Rams are going to stay, even though all around you, you had some scorned fans talking about, oh, I'm not going to buy any merchandise today because I don't want to support Stan Kroenke, which was honestly going on in that stadium. There was a lot of Stan Kroenke hate because he wasn't talking, and you could tell that, if somebody buys 100 acres of land in Southern California and, there's rumors of your franchise moving back to Los Angeles, that's going to throw up a few red flags. So the fact that he didn't say anything, and then publicly it seemed like they were going behind people's backs to try to make sure they got to LA while still trying to get the money out of the fans in St. Louis, that's just a similar situation. But the Raiders, it seems like, are trying to jack the prices up and then say, hey, our team's really contending now, so you don't want to miss out on the Oakland Raiders Super Bowl chance.
The Raiders are one of the better up-and-coming teams
and
in the league.
So young.
And when they hit their prime, they're going to be gone to Vegas. Even though the Raider fans have been supporting them through thick and thin, they haven't been good since 2001 or 2002, actually. I think.
Yeah, 2002 was the last time they were in the Super Bowl.
And they're finally good again. If Derek Carr hadn't gotten hurt, they would have at least made it to the AFC Championship game this year.
Exactly.
And now they're leaving. It's like your girlfriend says, hey, I'm leaving you in 2 years, and Never mind. I'm not going to go down this path. I'm going to backtrack. Never mind. Forget that metaphor.
Solid effort over
I-
there, man. That was. Oh, that's a solid
Well,
effort.
I was gonna make a comment about she wasn't as hot, and now she's hotter because she got some work done. And see, now I'm
You
just
really
gonna,
shouldn't have gone
I
there.
should.
That was terrible. I thought it was gonna be like a situation where it was like, oh, where like she still wants to. It's like, you're married or something. She's like, well, I'm planning on leaving you in 2 years when this other guy becomes available. But I'm gonna still live with you and be committed to you for those 2 years. We're gonna have some great times together, living together those 2 years, vacations, anniversaries. But as soon as those 2 years are up, I'm going to Jeffrey's house because he's gonna be available and like back in the States or something. Like, I don't know.
And he's a wild card.
That's a solid Vegas pun.
Thank you.
See, look, our metaphors working together. That was good. That was really good.
I think to sum it all up, we both feel really bad for Oakland. We think it's a net positive for the NFL to be in Vegas.
Yes.
We think the Raiders are a good fit for Vegas, but we would prefer to see it as an expansion team.
Right. You just hate to see those teams, leave the cities that they're in. It's just because those fans didn't deserve it. Because it's a lot of things that are out of the fans' control that go into it, and then they just get used as pawns in a big scheme. So, guys, we're going to debut a brand new segment that we're going to start to use to close out the show. And it's going to be interesting. It's not necessarily always going to be called about sports. And this is now going to be the opening segment. Are you guys ready? Get your ears ready. Get your listening devices ready. It's time for
Florida Man!
All right, everybody. This is this week's edition and the first inaugural edition of Florida Man. So, Bradley, on the streets of Central Florida, can you guess what happened?
Probably something ridiculous and crazy.
As always, because the streets down here are wild. Anyway, so around us, there's this man who has become my hero, who's unfortunately getting charged for this. He decided to casually eat his breakfast. Do you want to know where he decided to eat his breakfast?
Well, considering you said in the road in your previous question, probably in the middle of the road.
Dynamite on those context clues.
Yeah.
Dang straight. Anyway, yeah, he decided to eat his pancakes with a TV tray, just chilling in the middle of the road in the crosswalk, blocking the left lane of traffic, while his friend is standing in the right lane with his iPhone recording the whole thing. This man is my hero, and somebody needs to pay his bail and his legal fees because this is spectacular. How much entertainment came from this? I mean, think about the marketing for Florida that this caused, because everybody's talking about this. I mean, a lot of people are talking about this. I mean, this is great.
Was he actually blocking traffic or was he in a median?
From what I saw, he's sitting in the crosswalk. He was really close to the median, but he was actually blocking traffic, and there were cars honking at him. But it didn't seem like he was there that long. For one, I've driven down that street before. I'm surprised he's alive, personally. But it's just so great. It's hilarious. The man is shirtless in pajama pants, just chowing down on some, seems like pancakes he cooked up. He's got the syrup all ready to go. He's cutting them, eating them, and he's just having a good time.
He got charged for that?
I'm trying to remember what his charge was, but yes, they are pressing charges.
He's probably
going to
get 60 days. But man, that's so funny. Bro's just chilling in the road with the TV tray eating his pancakes. Just like
a
nothing's
casual
going on in the world.
Casual Saturday morning, man.
So good.
Just casual Saturday morning. For one, kind of makes me want to try this. I'm not going to, but I salute you because that takes some guts. Some real guts.
Good job, Florida man. I'm proud of you.
Good job, Florida man.
Could I bring up a bonus episode of Florida Man, but it's not as good, so we won't use it as a full segment?
Yeah, go for it.
Apparently, there's now a phenomenon going on in Orlando called car twerking.
Ooh, this is awesome. I spend a lot of my time in Orlando. No.
So girls are climbing through the sunroofs of their, I assume, friends or significant others' vehicles, standing on the roofs while the vehicle is in motion, mind you, and twerking
This is spectacular.
in Orlando, Florida. It's called car twerking, and it's a new phenomenon.
I mean, honestly, I'm kind of excited about that because I spend a lot of time in traffic in Orlando. So I may see this. I mean, I've seen some crazy stuff in the middle of the night around here, but this is like broad daylight, just girls getting up there and twerking.
Yep.
That's gonna be great.
I just thought I'd mention that. And that concludes this week's episode of Florida Man.
Florida Man.
Did we need that little extra?
I thought I'd try to harmonize and it just didn't go over well.
We weren't singing at the same time. How are you going to harmonize?
It's gonna be like an echo harmony.
Just get us out of here.
I mean, I had another point, but I'll save it for next week. Fine.
What was your point? What was your point?
I was gonna say something about Orlando and how, you know. Anyway,
I already wrapped the segment.
Let's wrap the segment up. That's fine. I don't want to get into it. Just a guy was shouting in my general direction, and he was shouting a lot of nonsense.
Hey, that can be the next episode of Florida Man. Save it.
Ooh, all right. I will save it. All right, guys. This concludes episode 7 of the Rollout Show, and thanks for joining us. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at the Rollout Show. Find us on Podbean, iTunes, YouTube. We're gonna have our show posted soon. And thank you for listening, and I think this is one of our best ones yet. We're going to continue to get better, and thank you all for being patient with us, and we're going to continue to strive to bring you the best entertaining, comedic, and informative sports show.
Woo!
Yeah, yeah. Now let's roll out. I didn't quite like that one. Let's try that again. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. And roll out. Woo! Money.